Hello and welcome to another episode of Corgi Town USA. I am Candy, owner of Corgi Town USA. In my lap is Chuckles. We also have Booger, Hammer, Mortimer Barnabas, and Digby the Doof in studio today. And
Digby's
as
being
always,
really good.
he's being a sweet little doof.
Yes.
Yes. And tell everybody who you are. If
I
you don't
am
know.
Catherine. I am
The infamous.
I'm the infamous. I am the Corgi mommy by accident, and executive producer of the Corgi Town USA podcast.
Yes.
Yeah,
And what's the butcher, baker, candlestick maker of
pretty much
business?
a bit. Well, no, I'm trying not to be the butcher. I am a marketing digital marketing rep. I can feel so Digby is
Not
between my
liking the
feet.
landscaper.
And yes, the landscaper is outside as we record this episode, and I can feel Digby growling and just giving a little squeezes.
The whole audience is going to feel it now
yeah.
that we have the cacophony of Bork started.
Yep.
Well, bear with us, ladies and gentlemen. This is a Corgi podcast. As you know, we have a lot of very opinionated, loudmouthed corgis.
We do.
So we do get interruptions and they also frap. So sometimes we lose camera equipment or lights. We'll be right back and we'll mute accordingly when that warrants it. So without further ado, I want to talk about we talk a little bit about behaviors, training, good manners, just among the dog community, some of the common stuff in corgis, as well as other breeds. So we have a lady that has some background and some training and behavioral training. Should we bring her on?
Absolutely.
Everyone, please say hello to Miss Karen Deeds. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, we appreciate you taking time to come on and educate us. Can you please tell us a little bit about your experience and background?
Well, I started in dog training. Actually, I started in horse training first. I used to train horses and I got into competition with my dogs. And I used to show my first show dog was a Chow, believe it or not. And he is actually what led me into behavior.
Chinese fighting
Because
dog.
no, they're not known for being overly friendly, although he did great. He was an anomaly, right? And he loved people. In fact, I used to take him to a nursing home and he did therapy work there long before therapy work was actually kind of a big thing. It wasn't very regulated back then. And then we went to the local nursing home in the town where I lived. Anyway, I was preparing for competition and was working outside one evening, and I was in a parking lot and I had left him on an out of sight downstay. And I walked behind the building, which ironically happened to be a church, and I was assaulted. And I yelled and screamed, and my dog came around the corner and he's going, "Mommy, I know I shouldn't be breaking my downstay, but you sound like you're a little upset." So he chased the bad guy away. And I don't know if
Good
the
boy.
kid was waiting for, yeah, exactly. I don't know if he
Mhm.
was waiting on a drug deal or trying to break in. I don't know what was going on. But anyway, my dog took control of the situation. And after that, and he's at this time, I think he was about 3 years old. But after that, he developed an issue with people that were similar to that person. And yeah, it's called one event learning. Dogs can learn from one bad event. Sadly, they don't always learn from one good event, but it seems like one bad event really sets it in stone sometimes.
Yep.
And so I actually 2 weeks later took him to the groomer and left him there. And they called me and they said, "Ma'am, you need to come get your dog. He's trying to eat the bather." And I'm like, "What?"
Uh-oh.
So I get there, and the guy is the spitting image of the guy who had assaulted me 2 weeks prior.
Oh man.
So I asked somebody else to go get him out of the kennel. And this little blonde girl runs back to the back and she brings him up. And of course, I'm there with the kid, and my gut goes, "Oh my God, this is just like the kid, from 2 weeks ago." And my dog started to growl. He started to snarl. And when he saw the kid, the little blonde girl, no problem. The young man, problem. So ironically, I hired that kid. I came back later that evening. I brought him a 6-pack of beer because that's what we did, and I brought a lot of hot dogs for my for my chow. And basically, I had this young man stand behind a pillar
Okay.
in front of their store, and I'm out in the middle of the parking lot. And the kid comes out from behind the pillar, and my dog goes, "Whoa." "Rrr," and I start shoving hot dogs in his mouth. And then I nod my head. The kid goes back behind the pillar. I say, "All done." And there's no more hot dogs. Kid comes out, hot dogs. Kid goes in, no hot dogs. Kid comes out, hot dogs. Kid goes in, no hot dogs. It's called classical counter conditioning. And if anybody knows anything about psychology, it's Pavlov.
Hmm.
And about the fifth time the kid comes out from behind the pillar, my dog goes, "Hey, mom, pay up." And I went, okay. So I had changed his emotional response at that level, at that distance,
Right.
to that kid. And I went, oh my God. So this is how science works. I was a psych major, so maybe that's kind of why I got into that. But from there, I realized, and this was 1990, a long time ago.
Right.
That's what is that? 30. My God, I'm old. 33 years ago. Jesus.
You
And
and me both.
I know time just flies, doesn't it? And so I started just to realize that this can actually change behavior. And that's how I started studying behavior versus training, because there is a difference.
Hmm.
Okay.
Sit down, stay calm does not solve all your problems. Making your dog sit and face their fears is basically saying that the fear of getting up, the punishment of getting up, is more fear evoking than the thing that you're making them stay for. And there's a lot of training that still happens that does that. It's not how I train, obviously. I really want to train with to change the emotional response. That's really what I'm after, is the emotions.
Hmm.
Emotions first. Yeah.
So, what would you say, since we're talking about this and not training specifically behaviors, but behavioral, what are some misconceptions about that?
That obedience will fix everything. I do use, and I hate to even use the word obedience, because I mean, I competed in obedience, but that was very different than, your dog sitting and waiting at the door and sitting and waiting for their food bowl to come down, and coming when called. All of that stuff is real world stuff. I just call that basic manners. And that's great to have on board, obviously, but it doesn't really change your dog's emotions in regard to what they're typically worried about or aggressive towards. And so one of the biggest misconceptions is your dog has to be obedient and it has to obey. The other biggest misconception is that you have to be the alpha, the pack leader, the dominant one. Well, dogs haven't been pack animals for, I don't know, since they were dogs. Wolves are pack animals. Dogs are not. Wolves are
Oh.
monogamous. Yeah, wolves are monogamous. They raise their young to adulthood. They have to survive on their own. They have to fight for survival. They have to protect themselves. Now, granted, I realize some street dogs have to do that, but they're not pack animals. That doesn't mean they can't pack to kill, because I live in the country, for God's sakes. And believe me, I've seen a pack of my neighbor's dogs get together and take down a donkey, take down a goat. My neighbors lost a donkey and a goat
Wow.
to animals, to dogs that were packing together.
Yeah.
And but those dogs aren't pack animals. They get together to do their little thing and then they go back to their own places. And so the whole concept that wolves are pack animals is true, but that dogs are, and that you have to be the alpha and the leader. What you really need to be is consistent, and you have to create some predictability and safety in their environment, in their world.
Sure.
And as a positive reinforcement trainer, I always get said, "Oh, you're so permissive." I'm like, "Oh, there's nothing permissive about what my dogs have to do. I am very predictable when it comes to how the world works for my dogs."
Yeah.
That in and of itself reduces anxiety. Knowledge is power. produces confidence. Confidence reduces anxiety.
So
And so
there's a misconception about having to be alpha, that there's not really alpha. However, I would still say that it stands true that in order to be a strong trainer, you need to be a strong handler, right?
Or
Because
do you?
and I guess that what's your definition of strong? I don't know. I mean, I don't need to be a harsh enforcer. I
never
need to be a
harsh.
reinforcer.
Yeah,
I
never
need to
harsh.
reinforce. And strong, I mean, Jesus, I work with people in wheelchairs. They're not strong. I work with
Well,
quadriplegics. They're not strong.
strong is a word that's conjecture. It could be conjecture.
Exactly.
So what I think consistency. So I bring this up because corgis, we see corgis that sometimes don't get the training that they need or the kind of guidance that they need. And the thing about corgis specifically, which I can speak on because I've had 7 over 17 years, that they can't. I'm a masochist. No, but you have. I always say you have to be a strong handler, and what I mean by that is yes, consistency. They're very bossy and they're very opinionated. They're not
Absolutely.
what you would think of as a quote unquote I don't want to overuse words, but a submissive breed. And that's what I mean by they need a strong handler. If you don't let that corgi know that you are the one that kind of sets the boundaries here and sets the rules
Bingo.
and the schedule,
The
that's to
what
me
you
is a
just
strong
said was
handler.
what you just said was boundaries.
Hmm.
That's what I
Right.
call predictability. This is the way the world works.
Right.
Doesn't mean you have to force them to do anything. It
Yeah.
just means that there are rules in play. Absolutely, there's rules in play. And the biggest thing with the corgis, we have to remember. I see a huge difference between a corgi and a border collie,
Hmm.
an Australian shepherd, a
Yeah.
blue heeler.
We have
Right?
we have a blue
Three out of
heeler.
those 4, yeah, 3 out of those 4 breeds move cattle.
Right.
They don't take crap off of anybody,
Yeah.
right? They move
Yeah.
cattle.
Right.
Yeah.
So they are tough dogs, but that doesn't mean that they're not fearful, because most of the behavioral problems stem from anxiety and fear.
Hmm.
And so you have to understand that if they're growling, like whoever was growling in your lap just a minute ago, because a landscaper's out there,
Hmm.
he's not trying to dominate the landscaper. He's saying, dude, go away. You're in
Right.
my area. I don't feel
Sure.
safe with you here. This isn't about him trying to dominate. Yeah, this isn't about him trying to dominate the landscaper. Jesus, he doesn't know him. Dominance is a relationship. It's not a characteristic.
Yeah.
So in order
Interesting.
for there to be a dominant dog, there has to be a submissive one. And if you want to be the dominant dog, well, that just puts your dog, or the dominant person, then that just makes your dog the submissive. That's not a relationship I want to have with my dog. I want my dog to go, sure, I'd be happy to do that. Versus, oh shit, do I have to? Okay, I will. I'll avoid the correction to do it. And I know that's not what you're saying, but definitely there's got to be rules and boundaries, because the corgi is a dog that will run you over if allowed, for sure.
Oh yes.
We
Oh
see
yes.
it all the time,
We see it.
unfortunately.
So now I where it comes to and I'm gonna use a very specific instance that just happened to us last week. We have a corgi and a blue heeler, so we get herded around the house a lot. And so the blue heeler was walking in the backyard. We live in Phoenix, Arizona. We are in a desert. It is, yeah, as of this recording, it is October when those damn
November.
things, November, but this was, no, oh, this was November
Okay.
when this happened, or no, it was right before Halloween. So it was a couple of days before Halloween, October, end of October, when these damn things should be in hibernation. Our dog got bit by a rattlesnake, and now I've been told that he needs snake training.
Well, the problem with any snake training is that your dog still has to be able to hear it, see it, or smell it to know it's there. And this concept, or this came from a hunting dog trainer. He said it's really irrelevant whether your dog has snake avoidance training or not, because if the dog hears the snake,
Right.
right, they still have to be in vicinity to know that that snake is there.
Yep.
And most of the dogs get bit when they're running and they don't know the snake is there.
And that's exactly what happened, because everyone
A
said,
shocker.
did the dog, and the
Yes.
snake got caught up in netting. P.S. For all you animal lovers out there, I paid the extra $100 to have the Arizona Herpetological Society take the snake out of the netting it was caught in and
Bless
rehome
you.
the snake. So yeah,
Bless you.
don't even leave the comments. Everyone asked, did Wiggin attack the snake or go after the snake or anything? No, Wiggin was bit on the left hind leg.
Mhm.
So poor Wiggy was running back to the house and
Mhm.
got bit.
And he's healing well.
And he's
Yeah.
healing
Yeah,
well.
a big-
Continued
Good.
prayers,
Yes.
of
You
course.
got him
Yes.
quick help. Like
Yes.
a good paw rinse.
Yes.
Yes.
There are some amazing Facebook groups out there, by the way. I'm on them all. There's a
Okay.
snake bite group for dogs. It's
Oh.
actually a snake bite group, and they have veterinarians on staff because sadly, and I used to work at vet clinics. I have a sister who's a vet. Most vets don't have what is necessary to treat snake bites.
We had
venomous
to take
snake
him to emergency. We had to take him to
Yeah.
emergency. In fact, he went to his regular vet today, and she, being in Phoenix, Arizona, said, I have not encountered snake bites. They, rightly so, they go to the emergency vet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they should have antivenom. Benadryl doesn't do any good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
those
and-
are another myth out there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. And so then you're saying snake training, no bueno?
I mean, the problem with snake training, especially if you're using the remote training collar, which means your dog has to go, oh, I see it, zap,
right.
and
Yeah.
now I don't like what I see. Do you
Mhm.
know how many dogs I know I have worked with that have been snake trained that are now afraid of the hose? A lot.
Oh.
That makes sense.
Do you,
Yeah,
do you
the
know how many
e-collar.
dogs the e-collar? Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I see, and I do know dogs that are fine with that kind of punishment because it's positive punishment. We want to add something, the electricity around the neck, to decrease the behavior. That's punishment.
Right.
Positive is the addition of, and punishment is the decrease of the behavior. So we add electricity to decrease the dog from going towards the snake. And I don't know, how about a puppy come?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, hello. That's now granted, if my dog is staring at something. In fact, it just happened just this morning. My Labrador, he's a big dork. God, is he a dork. And we've had a lot of rain, and sometimes we get the crawdads.
Right.
And
Oh,
they're
yeah.
not very friendly, right? And so he was out there and he was looking at something, and he's the kind that would probably get a pincher in his nose because he's just that kind. And it was just, Stony, here, and he went, okay, I'm coming. Right?
Yeah.
I just called him away from whatever he was looking at. I went out
Right.
and looked, and I don't even know what it was. I couldn't find anything, so it's irrelevant. But I called him away from something that had caught his interest.
Yeah.
I do get snake avoidance training. I know there's a lot of people that do snake avoidance training. I just want to caution anybody who wants to use any kind of punishment that there's always going to be the potential for fallout.
Something you didn't
Does
plan
the-
for. Mhm.
Correct. You zap your dog when he hears a snake, but he's looking at a little boy. Well, guess what? Now he says, okay, little boys make my neck hurt. I don't like little boys. Those are that's fallout.
Mhm.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I can no longer open a soda can because it goes right.
Yeah.
And my dog hits the dirt. Had that one. How did I know that? Oh, I had one it was a Corgi, of course. She couldn't use she couldn't take the tin foil and rip it out of the box because
Oh,
the sound
no.
scared her dog so much it would
Oh.
attack her after snake avoidance training.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
okay. Good advice.
So,
Information.
Again, that is just there are consequences sometimes.
Right.
There's
Right.
consequences.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. I'm glad to know that there are Facebook groups for
Oh,
danger noodles for us desert dwellers that of course in
yes.
Texas you have all kinds of critters, but
We only have 4, although they are we're starting to get the timber rattler and the pygmy rattler as well.
Mhm.
But we typically only have 4 venomous. And last year, or I guess almost a year and a half ago, I was laid up because I had a knee replacement, and I started getting into the snakes. Don't ask me why, but I am on several snake Facebook groups, and now I can look at a snake and go, "Oh, non-venomous, we're good."
Yeah.
I might
Yeah.
go, "I'm not sure." So
Right.
I'm going to go take a picture and I'm going to put it on the Facebook group, and they're going to tell me what it is. I
Sure.
love that stuff. And
yeah.
but they do have a snake bites a group as well, that for people as well as animals. Yeah.
Well, that's a
All right.
great resource. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
You
I
bet.
do want to talk about getting back to the behaviors.
Sure.
What do you see? So you've educated us now, and I completely agree with you and know that to be true from my own experience that most behavior issues, if you want to call them, they're based in fear and based in the dog being uncomfortable and anxiety. What do you see that is most common?
Well, it changes, and what we've seen in the last couple of years has been a huge increase in separation anxiety.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I personally don't deal with separation anxiety because there are specialists that do nothing but separation anxiety. And I go,
Wow.
yeah, you can have those certified separation anxiety trainers. There's a bunch of them that are certified through a program, and I refer everybody to them. But the reason we're seeing that is because of COVID.
Right.
I saw a huge increase, even in dogs that had been fine. And then all of a sudden, mommy and daddy and everybody stays home 24/7 for, 6 months, 8 months, a year. And then when they go back to work, all of a sudden the dog's going, whoa, wait a
Oh.
minute.
Oh.
Oh my
Yeah.
God,
Yeah.
horrible.
What's going on? Yeah.
I had one of my first cases after COVID when I was allowed to go to work was intra-housemate dog aggression that had started when COVID hit because everybody was at home and the dogs were spending more time together. Normally, when mommy and daddy are gone, the dogs are in their little kennels and they're fat, dumb, and happy. They come home, somebody takes them out to potty in the at lunchtime, and they have this huge routine. Well, now COVID hits and there's no routine. They were
Right.
trying to kill each other.
That's one of
I
the
can see that.
most common reasons dogs get rehomed is the
Yes.
dog
Yes,
on dog aggression. Yeah.
Yeah.
yes, yeah,
I mean, you got to
and,
figure
and
humans were trying to kill each other during COVID and so many divorces and everything.
yes,
We still are.
True. Yeah.
We still are trying to kill each other.
And and too many couples were like, I didn't realize how much I dislike my, spouse or significant other. You would
exactly
think, and if it happens to us, why wouldn't it happen to our dogs?
I think that's
right.
a shift in I think the takeaway from that
Yeah.
is a major shift in lifestyle and way of living is
Yes,
going to affect emotional creatures mentally.
Yes.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Environment change is huge.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Totally. Environment influences a lot of things. And then a lot of people went and adopted dogs, right? There for a while, the shelters were empty.
Right.
Yes.
But that's not always a great thing. As somebody who works with a lot of dogs that really and truly should never have gone out the front door, and I hate to say that, but there are a lot of dogs that have been placed into people's homes that are dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not talking specifically about corgis,
Mhm.
although I've had to evaluate, and that's what stinks about my job is I have to give feedback to a lot of the rescue groups. That's one of the reasons I know Sandy Granbort,
Mhm.
who was in rescue and sheltering world forever, and is, in fact, I remember, I do believe it was a corgi she brought over. We ended up having to put him to sleep
Oh
because he
no.
was just unpredictable, and
Yeah.
he wasn't warning. He was an anxious mess. He was fearful and fight or flight, right? You can basically do 4 things when you're feeling threatened. You can freeze, not normal, especially for a corgi. You can flee, also not a corgi thing. You can fight. That's where we growl, snarl, snap, bite, or we can fool around.
Mm.
And that's that fidgety, that spinny, licky, jumpy,
Mhm.
nippy, but not
Digby.
necessarily. Yeah, that's not that. That's that constant appeasement. It's kind of like, hey, don't hurt me, please, please, please. The groveling, the constant licking,
They're trying to
and
self-soothe, right?
correct. There's that.
Yeah.
Appeasement, by definition, in the dog world, is avoiding hostility.
Mhm.
So what they're trying to do is make nice. They're like a little kid that goes, "Mommy, mommy, mommy, please don't hurt me. Don't be mad. Don't be mad. Don't
Wow.
be mad." And so
Yeah.
I honestly don't see that a lot with corgis. I don't see it a lot with, I see it more with Aussies, even though they're cattle dogs.
Yeah.
I see a lot of fear in the mini American Shepherd, the mini Australian Shepherd, a lot of fear in that breed. You
Yeah,
know,
I have
corgis in
a friend
general.
that has one as a corgi mini Augie mix. It's
Mhm.
Augie corgi mini Aussie mix, and
Wow.
he's a biter. He bites. He just bites, and
Yeah.
I don't know if he's just scared of everything. He's tiny.
I would
He's
think
a
so.
tiny.
Yeah,
Just bite,
he's
bite, bite, bite.
tiny. And you know, and a lot of that is we have to, at that point in time, we have to assess the level of bite inhibition. I mean, is it a level of bite that is livable? Can
Mhm.
you live with a dog that is biting you and never leaving holes? Do you want to do that? And there are a lot of
Yeah.
people that go, yeah, I'm okay with that. You know, I'm okay with growly, snarly, snappy. And of course, I have to go and go, but what is the dog going through? If the
Yeah.
dog is constantly growly, snarly, snappy, it's obviously not happy. So we need to change that.
And I'd be afraid of them
And
biting the wrong person
Yep.
too.
well, of
'Cause that
course,
yeah.
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
course. And that's the family dynamics, right? We have to look at, I mean, Jesus, I own a lot of dogs that nobody else will own. A lot. Most of the ones that are here because they couldn't be anywhere else.
Right.
Hmm.
My
Yeah,
border collie mix is one of those, probably.
perfectly behaved, wonderfully mannered, docile animals are typically not the ones you find in shelters and in rescue groups because people don't typically give those up.
Not at all.
That's true. We are, the owner surrenders can tend to be those because they've at least lived in a household, except if they're being surrendered because of behavioral problems.
Right.
You know, when I worked in the assistance dog industry, which I did for 15 years, hearing service and seizure response dogs, we actually did pull dogs from shelters. And you're right, it was really hard to find nice dogs. That was
Yeah.
really easy to find the dogs that my husband used. My husband's a retired federal canine handler, so he did disaster search and rescue stuff. And that's actually how we kind of met. Is
Aw.
I know, it's kind of funny. We were both involved in a program called the Gifted Animal Placement Program.
Oh,
And we
okay.
would go to shelters and rescue groups and teach them how to evaluate dogs in their shelter for different jobs. And again, I'm looking for the nice dogs, right? Which I rarely found. And my husband at the time, who wasn't my husband, he was looking for the crazy, ball, intense, will do anything to chase a toy kind of dogs.
That's
No, those
Chuckles.
are hard to live with. Yeah, those are hard to live with.
Yeah.
And we had a corgi. It was a corgi mix. I remember we pulled it out of the Fort Worth shelter. I want to say it was after Sandy had already left. And it was HSNT, the Humane Society of North Texas, pulled out a dog, and he ended up being a narcotics dog.
Oh.
And then I know I had a little healer that ended up being a arson dog.
Wow.
And what we look for are those crazy dogs that nobody wants to live with. I've lived with too many because that's what my husband did. I have, all of his FEMA dogs are now retired or are now deceased, but we still have a couple that are intense like that.
Well, bless you. I do want to go back before you finish that thought. I want just for clarification, why do you think that ball obsessed chasers are hard to live with in your assessment? Because that is the epitome of Chuckles in my lap here.
And Digby next to me.
Digby is too, but not to the degree.
No, not to the degree.
Chuckles is.
No, Chuckles will kill you for that ball.
But he's you don't say that, he's sweet.
No, he is. He's very sweet, but he,
and I say that is, and I would say my border collie was probably more obsessed. My husband's dog that was with him at 9/11 was probably the best house dog we had. But when you said you're ready to work, oh, honey, bar the door. I mean, I think she broke a finger on every member of the task force because she played so hard.
Oh my
Now,
goodness.
granted, she was a 78-pound Labrador from
Mhm.
from
Yeah.
rescue,
Mm-hmm.
and she was intense. So it's not like let's go throw the ball a couple hundred times, and that, of course, is not good for any dog. Is to go play fetch in endlessly because you're just pumping up more adrenaline. You're injuring shoulders. There's all sorts of things that you need to do instead.
Yeah. Overuse injuries. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. And then just creating crazy. I actually have a little mini doodle that I'm working with right now that I played with a ball with her one time in my training studio. And now, a week later, she's still obsessively looking for it
Aw.
because her owners for 3 years had just played fetch, 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 fetch,
Gave in
fetch.
to her demands. Yeah, gave in to her demands.
Yes. And
Chuckles, we
and
do.
so
Chuckles and I, we do 15-minute increments. We will play for 15
and
minutes. Okay, it's time to come back. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you set some boundaries like that, that's
Mhm.
lovely. And of course, I'm trying to put toy play on cue. If you want to play, sit, fetch,
Mm.
down, fetch. I want to
Well,
use it.
work for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And
why
I
do you
think
think
that
they're
builds a
hard to
lot of
live with?
clarity. Most dogs don't want to live with a dog that wants to jump on top of counters and refrigerators and get into your refrigerator or your closets and look for anything that might become a toy. I mean, these dogs they're intense. They're
Well, that's
they're
lack of
into everything
boundaries, right? That falls under your lack of boundaries.
to
Because
a certain
Chuckles,
extent.
okay, because
Yeah, to
Chuckles
a certain
doesn't do
extent.
any of that, but he
Yeah.
also knows that mom's not going to let him jump up onto things that he shouldn't be because he could
Well,
hurt
but
himself.
you
Yeah.
you can't tell a dog that that's their job
Okay.
not to do that.
Okay. Okay.
Right? These are
Okay.
dogs that are on rubble. They're not like going for lost little Timmy in the woods. These
Right.
dogs are looking for people in rubble, and
Yeah.
they are intense. My guess is if you took little Chuckles to a place where he's never been and threw and gave the toy to somebody else, he'd go, "Give me a minute. I'm not so sure about this."
No, he'd
No,
chase
he'd
it.
be okay. He'd do it.
Yep.
Okay, good.
He,
So he's one of
all his
those dogs
life.
that all his life.
Yeah.
It's just that most dogs don't want to live with that kind of dog without an off switch. Like I say, all of our dogs have pretty much an off switch.
Right. And
Sometimes it
Chuckles
has to be forced. And he
Chuckles
has
has
a
an off
natural off
switch.
switch.
Yeah.
Yep. Chuckles has an off switch. Digby has an off switch.
They know when to chill
Hard to
out.
find, but he
Yeah.
has an off switch.
Well, because we've taught them. We've taught
Yeah.
them when it's, hey, this is
Yes.
our quiet time. Those are boundaries.
Yes.
Well, I would
Yeah.
love to. We could do this all day, and we'd love to have you back on. So I
Yes,
don't want to take
indeed.
up too much of your time, but I do have a question. You're educating us about methods and things about what methods you would use for behavior training. And I'm actually going to be selfish here and use my own example. So one of the things that Chuckles has is very mild resource guarding, and by mild I mean he is not aggressive in the sense that he's going to hurt anybody. He just gets noisy, and he has all of the physical presentations of I'm having a good time. This is fun. But that could also be anxiety. So I pay very close
Right.
attention to, is this friendly or could this turn? And so far we haven't had anything that's
No,
scary.
no.
He doesn't seem to want to tear any other dogs anything. But he will when we go to the door, when we go to go for a walk, with if something exciting is about to happen, he wants to get in his brother's face and yell at him. And so the
Okay.
way that I've done that is, where's your stuffy? Go get your stuffy. And he'll go get his stuffy and he'll go instead of in his brother's
That's
face. And then when we go
that's an
outside,
income.
I'll say, drop it. And he'll go, okay. And then we're on, and it
Perfect.
keeps him out of his brother's face.
That's a lovely use of an incompatible behavior, right?
Okay.
That is absolutely an appropriate option.
So redirection.
Typically it's kind of redirection, but you're basically saying go do this instead of be a jerk to your brother. Now,
Okay.
granted, you have to remember what being a jerk, where does that be a jerk to your brother come from? And a lot of dogs get into other dogs' faces. Remember, we're working with headers and healers here because we are corgis. We're wanting to control everything.
Yep.
Everything is about
Yep.
control.
Yep.
Either make it move or stop it from moving.
Mhm.
So if the other dogs are, yay, we're all excited, and he goes, I want that to stop. So then the one we have to create and fix is this one. The one that's causing him to go, stop it.
Okay.
So if we teach this one that, guess what? When I pick up the leashes, we don't walk to the door until you're quiet. That's a boundary. That's impulse control. Do you want something? How do you ask nicely?
Mm-hmm.
Here's a leash.
Interesting.
If you're quiet, here's a cookie. Here's a leash. Here's a cookie. Here's a leash. Here's a cookie. I'm going to put the leash closer to your collar. If you're still quiet, here's a cookie. If you start acting like a maniac and jumping around, oh, too bad, so sad. We're not going for that walk now.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to use positive reinforcement. And what we're doing, we're reinforcing them with the leash. We're reinforcing them by opening the door, but we're punishing them, negative punishment. We're taking away the leash if they act a fool.
Interesting.
But you have to teach that what do you want them to do instead behavior, which is what your go get your toy is.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's a behavior to go do instead. What I do is, if I were to teach, and I always think about, where does the walk start? For the dog, where does the walk start? It doesn't start on the street.
Hmm.
It starts in fact, I had a lady with an Aussie, and I asked her, I said, where does your walk start? She says, well, out on the front porch. And I said, where does the dog think your walk starts? And she thought about it for a second. She went, when I put on my visor. She says, the second I put on my visor and I don't have golf shoes on. She lived on the golf course. I only wear my visor twice, 2 times a day, golfing and walking.
Wow.
But one time I have shoes on that are golf shoes. The other time it's tennis shoes. And my dog knows the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So when I pick up that visor and I have tennis shoes on, my dog starts to bark and spin. I said, well, that's where the walk starts for your dog.
Yeah.
So
Socks
when you
here.
reach for the visor,
Socks.
yeah,
Put on your socks. We know it's time.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. When you pick up that visor and your dog goes, that's the time where you go, sit. Good. And you reward that. Good. And you pick up the visor. Good. And you put it on your head. Good. And he gets up and he acts a fool. Oh, too bad. So sad. So that's
Wow.
just teaching the dog to be calm, so that you don't have somebody else that has to be the play police, because that's what's happening with your dog. The one you're
Mhm.
saying go get the toy, is he's just trying to control everything. So you've given him something to put in his mouth, stuff a sock in it, right? So instead you teach everybody to be calm, so
Yeah.
he doesn't have to control anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And that is the number one time for intra-housemate dog-to-dog aggression issues starts at thresholds. Number one,
Mhm.
eating and thresholds. I don't
Yeah.
understand why people think they should feed their dogs together. I'm like, okay, so resource guarding, number one, is natural. The dog, the wolf that resource guarded, is the one that became domesticated and became the dog, right? The one that guarded all the other dogs, against all the other dogs at the fire pit where we were, cooking our meat way back when. Those are the ones that survived, and those are the ones that procreated. So it's a normal behavior.
Darwinian.
So,
Yeah.
yes, pretty
Mhm.
much. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I have 12 dogs. Don't judge me. I have 12 dogs. Um,
You're close.
they all
I'm almost halfway there.
They all eat in crates except one, and she's my blind 15-year-old Shih Tzu.
Aw.
Okay, so you then are a proponent of crate feeding. I ask this because that tends to be sort of a very divisive among training communities. People say don't feed them in their crate; it increases aggression. I've heard that.
Oh, I think you have to look at the dog. I mean, I admit, my border collie, if I walk by when he's eating in his crate, he's now trapped, right?
Mhm.
And he's eating. Well, the thing is, don't walk by while they're eating,
Right.
right? Don't poke the bear.
Yeah,
Okay.
give them their own
So
their own comfort
give him
source.
their safe space. Cover his crate. Let him finish.
Mhm.
Okay.
And I do know some dogs that will, including my border collie, who would guard his crate whether there's food in it or not, because that's his safe space, and he wants more room around that safe space. My golden retriever was horrible that way, and I competed with her for 10 years. We would go to dog shows, and I would set up in the corner and I'd cover her. And then when I'd go to the huge shows where we had to crate, side by side by side by side, I would cover her, and I would sit my chair in front of her, and I would set her up for success, so that I would minimize all the people with other Goldens that thought every Golden needed to love everybody, and that's just not true.
Mhm.
So I set them up for success is a big deal. Identify and minimize the issues
Triggers.
or the triggers,
Yeah.
situations that spark your dog. My
Yeah.
Labrador, oh Jesus, I could put his food bowl in there and throw 15 other dogs in there and he'd be fine, right? He wouldn't care. It would not care. He's like, oh, hey, you want one? You want a piece? You want a piece? You want, okay, cool. We can all share. Thanks.
He's a
But
community pup.
he's Mr. Kumbaya. And
Yeah,
yes,
it says kumbaya.
that's why I bought him. I have had nothing but project dogs pretty
Mhm.
much my entire life. And I said,
Yeah.
you know what? I don't want a project dog anymore.
Yeah.
And I
want-
got the best freaking Labrador. I just love him. He's amazing.
Aw.
I use him
Sounds
to
amazing.
evaluate other dogs
Okay.
because he could easily tell me, oh, that one's crazy. I don't want to play with that one. He's told me very clearly that that dog is not friendly and I can't play with that kind of dog. And he's told me very clearly that that dog's pretty cool. We can play. And I've saved lives. And of course, I've condemned lives too, based on the way
Mm.
he plays with another dog.
He
Because if
sounds
they
like
can't get along-
Lilo, my first corgi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was Mr. I didn't have to train him. You just tell him. He's like, all right, cool, we're doing this. And not an aggressive bone in
Yeah.
his body, shared with
Yep.
everybody, no big deal.
Oh,
Yeah,
God.
most laid back ever.
Totally. I mean, he's probably in there, head down, belly up, snoring at this point in time. I guarantee I could probably go take a picture of him.
Aw.
That's probably the way he is. And he's not even 3. So he hasn't even hit maturity yet.
Oh my god.
But he's just
I love it.
he's a goof tard. That's what I call him. But
Well-
but I do think that dogs have changed in the last 10 years.
Oh,
Wow.
okay.
That's a quick evolution.
Yeah.
That is a quick evolution, but look at how quickly they had to evolve.
Yeah.
Think about your grandparents. Did you have house dogs?
No,
Were
they
they
used
outside?
to. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably.
Yeah.
We treat them as human members of the family now.
Very
And
much
and
so.
a lot of dogs go, you know what? I really don't want to go to that cafe with all those other dogs and people. No, I'm good. I don't. They don't want to be with a bunch of strangers. They want to be safe at home. Now,
Okay.
granted, my Labrador, of the 12 dogs I own, I have one that would potentially enjoy going to a cafe. 1 out of 12.
That's
Think
a
about
small
that.
number.
Now see, and I know I'm about to make this show go like 10 hours, but now what comes to mind is, well, this is what comes to mind now, and this was for me with Digby is the emotional. Yeah, I'm a little bit. We're the emotional support dogs. Where people go, no, I need to have this dog with me, and I wouldn't bring Digby everywhere. Basically, Digby stayed in the car, and not when it was hot, but when I first got him, I was an emotional wreck. I was going through a personal tragedy, and he became my emotional support dog. But I certainly didn't want to put him with other dogs. I didn't want to put him in bad situations. I just wanted him in that car with me as I'm driving along. I just wanted him there with me.
Yeah. Well, Chuckles is in ESA too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had an appointment this morning with a young lady and her husband who got their dog to be a emotional support animal. And they realized before he was even a year, that he was like going, not the job for me, man. He's like, I don't really want to get out of the car if you're going to make me go do that. And they figured it out very quickly. They're very
That's good.
lovely. I wish every client was like that. Very in tune to their dog. And they realize that it's not fair to the dog to put
Right.
them into those situations. And, as somebody who was in the assistance dog industry for 15 years,
Yeah.
I'm a little harder on some of the dogs out in public. And I'm not looking at, is the dog okay? Is the dog performing any duties, or is the dog okay? But is the dog okay? I'm enjoying being with mommy and daddy, or daddy, and I am hanging out and I like doing this job. I think there's a difference between doing the job and enjoying doing the job.
Okay.
And I think we really need to look at the dogs. Again, it goes back to the emotional state of the dog. and what we are subjecting them to sometimes.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, I love traveling with my dog. I feel naked when I don't.
Right.
Right.
Um, but I lost my redhead, my golden, very unexpectedly in May. And
So sorry.
yeah, it was horrible. I've lost 3 since then.
Oh,
Oof.
And yeah, it sucks. But I realized, and somebody said I was going to fly to a conference somewhere, and somebody said, "Well, why don't you take Cassidy?" And I'm like, "She's not a service dog." Well, I'm sure she could fly in the airplane. I said, "I'm sure she could too, but no." Number
Yeah.
one is I don't have a disability, and number two is I don't know. I've never trained her for that. I've never put her on an airplane. I
Yeah.
wouldn't just expect her to be okay with that, just for my comfort.
right.
But there are certainly some dogs that I think it's a mutual benefit to
Yeah.
be there.
Okay. All
I
right.
I just don't want people to be their dog's emotional support person.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that perspective. We are going to wrap up the show because I'm sure
Okay.
we could keep you all night talking about stuff, but we will have you back
Every
on
day.
because
Yeah.
there's so many different avenues we could take. And
Yes.
this has
Yes.
been very educational for all of us. If you want to learn more, dear audience, dear viewer, dear listener, Deeds, DEEDS K9connection.com. Check out her website. Karen, thank you so much for everything
You're welcome.
today. We hope you have a wonderful evening.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good
All
night.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I learned a lot today.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's how is the dog feeling?
Yeah.
How is the dog feeling? And
Yeah.
we get selfish. We can. It's true. We can sometimes get selfish and I think it's the same as those parents that insist that their kids, you've got to swim or you've got to be in band or you've got to do that, and the kid like showed interest once for 5 minutes and that's it, and then
Don't make your dog an overachiever.
don't make your dog an overachiever.
Don't give him overachiever syndrome.
No, don't give him overachiever. If he doesn't like it, stop. She doesn't like
Yeah.
it, stop.
It's good to be in tune and pay attention to their
absolutely.
mannerisms. And the more
Absolutely.
you know your dog better than anyone else.
Very
But
true.
again, if you want to learn more, go to Deeds K9 Connection, DEEDS K9connection.com.
Yep.
Get some more information. Karen is obviously a wealth of information. And we hope that you've enjoyed tonight's broadcast. Thanks for sticking with us. It's a little longer than usual, but we hope that we kept your attention and that you learned some things.
I did.
And we'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you.
Bye.